I don't know about all of you, but it's been a little while since we've done a guitar build. So welcome to the first episode of the latest guitar build. What are we going to build? Something we haven't done in a little while is build a cigar box guitar. So bam! That's what we're going to do today. This is going to be episode 1. I'm Jeff. You're watching Home Built Workshop. Make sure you stick around. What's going on, everyone? Welcome to this episode of Home Built Workshop. This will be episode 1 of I don't know how many episodes, but this is the very beginning of our new cigar box guitar build. I've had this cigar box sitting around for a while, one that I've really become a fan of, and I'm anxious to turn this into an instrument. I like the color, the wood, everything. It's just going to be a cool build. I also have a piece of hard maple here that we'll use for the neck. It's going to work perfect. I've got some parts on order. They should be here by the time we get this processed and are ready for it. So there's no reason we can't just start building. I've got my MDF template here for my cigar box guitar necks. My necks are 1.5 inches wide. They're the same thickness at the nut all the way down. There's no taper built in there. And we're just going to cut this out sort of quote unquote old school. And by old school, I mean, we're not going to use a CNC this time around. We are going to double stick tape that down, bandsaw away the excess material, route everything flush with the router table, and bam, we got us a neck blank. As I stick this down, you'll notice that it is going on at a little bit of an angle. This piece does have a bit of run out in the grain, and in order to sort of minimize a little bit of that, I'm trying to go a little bit with the grain. It's not 100% perfect, but for a cigar box guitar, especially a 3-string, it's going to be just fine. Way stronger than it needs to be, and I'm not worried about it at all. But I do try to align the grain when at all possible. Since we're cutting this out on the bandsaw, I do like to take a pencil and trace a nice dark line around the outside. The main reason for this is it gives me a little bit more of a contrast when we get on the bandsaw, and it helps me to cut close to my template, but I don't want to cut into the template. And just over time, I found that having a dark line on there just helps me kind of visualize what I'm doing a little bit better. It's not necessary at all, but it is something I like to do. To the bandsaw we go. That looks pretty good. A little bit of burning on a couple of the corners. Probably about time to look at a new bit, but overall, that's going to work fine. We'll just have to do a little bit of sanding in a couple spots. There's our neck blank, all ready to go. Not very comfortable yet, but we'll fix that a little bit later. I believe now we can start doing a little bit of layout on the box itself and start figuring out exactly where we need to cut this notch in the end. To protect the box and yet still allow me to make some marks on there, I've got some low-tack tape that I'm going to stick on the side here. That way I can draw on it, but it's not really heavy enough that it's going to pull up a bunch of fibers when I remove it. Now we'll just lay this out using a center finding ruler. Center. So this portion of the lid is what we need to remove now. I might have to notch the bottom, that's why I carried those lines down there, but at the moment I'm not 100% sure. So for the time being, I'm just gonna make some cuts inside these lines, and then we can do our final fit with a file. I don't wanna try to cut on the line and risk having this too loose. Here I'm using a handsaw to just cut a series of shallow cuts. That way I can come in once I'm done and snap all that material out with a chisel. Now we'll clean up those cuts with a file. And after just a minute or two, it's time for a test fit. There it is. With the neck sort of fitting the box, now I've got a few decisions that I need to make. In order to finish fitting the neck to the box, I need to get the neck to length. But I can't cut the neck to length until I know what scale length that I'm going to use. And then really I need the fretboard attached so that I have the nut slot and I can make all my measurements and figure out exactly where the bridge is going to go. Then I can trim everything to length. It's kind of a spider web of decisions. I think what I want to do now is focus on the fretboard. I dug through my pile of fretboards that I cut a while back. This is one that I cut specifically for a cigar box guitar. This is a piece of Peruvian walnut. If you're not familiar with Peruvian walnut, Peruvian is very similar to black walnut, but it's a little bit darker, and I think the grain is typically just a little bit different. I think it's going to look awesome. This piece is almost perfectly quarter sawn. Not that we're too concerned for this application, but this fretboard I think is going to work really good. I've decided that I'm going to go with a 25-inch scale length for this build, so now we're just going to set up the fret slotting jig and get to cutting. Double check our depth before we really get going here. Have this little depth gauge. It's kind of hard to see. Just has marks on there to tell you the depth for different radius. This is flat right now, it's unradiused. I cut them just a little bit deeper than what the gauge says because I'm mainly sizing it for the center of the fret slot. I know that I'm going to put a radius on there. That's going to remove some of the depth. So as long as the middle is deep enough, we're good. There's our slotted fretboard. Now, if you're wondering, why didn't you just do that on the CNC machine? Well, it's a pretty valid question, and really I've made fretboards on the CNC machine before as well. Trying to keep this more of a hand tool kind of build, but also really this way, honestly, is way faster than doing it on the CNC machine. The advantage of a CNC machine is that the machine can be doing the work while you're doing something else, but it takes a really long time. Not counting the time it takes to design the file, you have to basically model the fretboard and really get everything programmed. I guess you don't really have to model the fretboard, there's other ways to do it, but you do have to spend some time programming it, and it's a great way. You can do some cool things like blind fret slots and inlays and all that stuff at the same time, which is awesome. But as far as speed, This is way faster. Now I need to mark out a center line on both the neck blank as well as the fretboard. This will allow me to align everything correctly when we glue the fretboard in place in just a moment. Now I think I'm going to go ahead and glue on the fretboard. There's still some work that we need to do to this neck. We need to make a notch to accept the lid. We need to cut it to length. It's still oversized in length. But I think this time I want to glue the fretboard in place. Then once we start making the notches and all that, it'll cut everything to size. It's going to work out just fine. I've experimented with this in the past with different orders, and really, as long as you work through the process, not one way or another is right or wrong. There's a lot of different ways to do things. You just got to think of your order of operations and make sure that whatever step you're doing now is not going to somehow affect something you need to do later. Just pay attention to that. You're going to be just fine. That's not going anywhere. And now back at the bandsaw, we'll cut away the excess fretboard material. I think we're going to keep trucking right along, and I'm going to work on this headstock a little bit more. I need to work on the headstock transition. This is basically exactly the same as a fender style neck where the fretboard transitions into the headstock, which we need to thin this headstock down a little bit so that the tuners will work. We're going to worry about this a little bit later. Let's get this done. To make creating that transition a little bit easier, actually a lot easier, I got a jig for that. This is a little contraption I came up with for my oscillating spindle sander. If you've watched other builds, you've seen this thing in use, so you probably know what it's going to do. But if you've never seen this before, originally the table is 90 degrees to the sanding drum. But in order to create this transition, I needed a fence that is basically parallel, I guess we could call it, with the sanding drum. And that's what this does. This fence right here is adjustable in and out so that I can set the thickness here. And then, once we get going, we'll pass the headstock in between the two, and it'll sand right here. And we can thickness it as well as create the transition into the fretboard. Super quick, super simple. This little guy here is just to hold the dust hose to keep the dust from clogging things up, because that will cause a problem. But really, this thing works really good. I don't have a video on this. That's why I figured I'd try to explain it a little bit. And maybe one day I'll rebuild it, but for now, this thing's working awesome. Now with the headstock thickness, we're going to use the drill press in a stepped drill bit that you've seen me use on other builds. We're going to use the marks that we made earlier to drill out the tuner holes. Bam! Look at that. That turned out really good. That is probably one of the cleanest logo burns that I've done, at least in quite a long time. Sometimes they come out really good, sometimes they take a little bit of sanding to get cleaned up. This one turned out awesome. And with the logo now on there, unfortunately, I think we're kind of at a stopping point on this build, at least for now. And let me explain why. While there's a few small things we could be working on to keep this project going, honestly, I feel that the next logical step is to finish fitting this neck to the box. And really what that entails is cutting a notch to accept the lid. The lid's got to have somewhere to go when you close it, and we need to remove some material to make space for the lid. The problem is I don't have the bridge yet. I've ordered it, and it's taken quite some time to come in. I need to have the bridge in hand. That way I can locate it and then measure from my 25-inch scale length to figure out exactly where this neck's going to fit inside the box. I know that I've got a few inches back here that are going to get cut off. Then from there, somewhere around here, I need to locate where that material is and remove it. That's going to mean some of the fretboard, but I need that bridge in hand so that I can make all of my measurements and figure out where that cut's going to be. I know a few of these frets are going to get cut off, but I don't know if it's this fret, this fret, this fret, this fret, this fret. I don't know. I just need that bridge so that I can make all of my measurements. I have a rough idea of where this is going to be, but I don't want to go off a rough idea. I'm going to wait until that bridge arrives. Then we can make our measurements and pick up this project right here. So I hope that makes sense as to why I'm pausing. Yes, I could do fretboard markers and, a few different things, but I want this to fit the box first. That way, maybe I make a mistake and then all my time putting frets in and the fretboard markers, all that would go to waste. And maybe for some reason I can't use this. So we're going to stop here. Plus that gives me some time to edit this part up until now so you guys can check it out. So make sure you're subscribed to the channel so you don't miss part 2 or maybe 3 or I don't know how many this is going to be, so that you don't miss any upcoming episodes. Also, if you're watching this on mobile, if you scroll down to the comments section, you'll see 3 little dots. Swipe that and there's a new thing called hype. Apparently you can hype the video, which shows the algorithms that these are the cool videos and that everybody should be watching. So go ahead and hype the video, hit that subscribe. I know there's a lot of things, but I appreciate all of you that do all of the things and help support the channel. Thanks a lot for watching, everybody. Hope you enjoyed this part 1 of the cigar box guitar build. We'll see you next time. Oh, I wish I had that bridge. Thought it would have been here days ago. Oh well, it's fine. We'll figure this out. It's no big deal. We got plenty of work. Now I got to go edit so you guys can watch this.